Have you ever shown up to a party underdressed? Well, that's exactly what happened here. We, one night, it was April 2018, we were out at Easter Jeep Safari and having a good time. And we had been out on the trails all day, had dinner, and one of our friends called us up and said, hey, tonight we're gonna do a night run. Do you wanna come out and do it? And a night run, typically, as it sounds, is a trail. You run it in the middle of the night. And they had selected to do Hell's Revenge. Now, Hell's Revenge is one of those trails in Moab that really is a fairly straightforward, easy trail. It's kind of like a roller coaster ride. You get to go straight up, you get to go straight down. But there's not a lot of heavy thought involved in the trail. It's a fairly straightforward trail where you don't have to spot each other. You don't have to work too hard at getting the perfect line. It's mostly just a point and shoot kind of a trail. There's a couple of extra credit lines that you can take that are really hard. But for the most part, it's an intense trail that is already pre-set up for most anybody to go out and drive. As long as you stay on the lines, it's fairly easy. That said, it's a little bit more difficult at night. You cannot see where you're going. You end up looking for the trail. You're looking to the right and the left and trying to find these little white marks to follow over the sandstone. And if you've never driven in Moab, the coolest thing about Moab is the fact that almost all of the trails have a thing called slick rock, which is sandstone. And it works kind of like sandpaper or grip tape. And you can drive up the steepest inclines and down the steepest inclines and have a ton of traction. So we went out to do this, and I've done this trail a couple times. It's pretty fun. But we had never done it at night. So we said, yeah, absolutely, love to go out and do the trail. What should we do? Where should we go? How should we, what are we gonna do? And my friend, he let us know that we're gonna meet at this certain restaurant at 11:30 at night. So we met up at the restaurant and we proceeded to meet 2 or 3 different trucks with us at that time and go out to the trailhead. And the trailhead is just a nice large parking lot area right there at Sand Flats Recreation Area. And so we drove up, the 3 of us, the 3 trucks, and then we met up with some of the other guys that were going to be going that night. And I did not realize who was showing up that night. It turned out that everybody brought monster trucks, and we brought our stock Jeep. Now, when I say stock, it wasn't stock. This was the first year that I did not have my vehicle. I had a company truck, a company Jeep. It was a Jeep Sport, and if you're familiar with the Jeep Sports, they do not have a lot of the things, the special little features like the higher tier vehicles. The Sport is open differentials. It does have 4-wheel drive. It does have the ability to have a low gear for climbing. And it works really well for a lot of different things. The difference is that the Sport that we had happened to be a company vehicle, and as a result had not been upgraded in the way that you would do it to your own vehicle. It had a lift, it had bigger tires on it, so it looked cool, looked good, but they were all the budget of the budget type of things. The tires were a basic tire that was probably the cheapest thing that you could buy at the local tire shop. The lift was a spacer lift, which was a couple $100 type of thing that would make the truck taller but not give it any more suspension, travel, or anything like that. And in general, we had essentially a very stock Wrangler, when the other guys that were showing up had all these custom built Jeeps that were big, huge V8 engines, big lifts, big tires, and essentially made to really drive hard off-road. And at that point, a little bit intimidated, I realized that we had come extremely unprepared. I'd driven the trail a couple of times, but I knew at this point that we were going to be driving it in a different fashion than I'd ever experienced before. And we went ahead and took kind of a 3/4 of the way back in the pack position, because I didn't want to be the last guy on the train, but I didn't want to hold up the fast guys either. And for the first half of the trail, we did a pretty good job of keeping up and keeping our placement on the trail to a point where we could go pretty quickly. And we were just fine. We kept up just fine. We drove all the way out to the overlook. The trail takes you to an overlook where you can look down and see the Colorado River, which is pretty neat. And at that point, we all kind of gathered up for a photo in the dark. At this point, it was probably about 1:30 in the morning. Took a photo in the dark, really cool, with the stars and the trucks there on the on the hillside, on the sandstone. And then a couple of the guys said, hey, want to go and try Hell's Gate? And Hell's Gate is an extra credit line on Hell's Revenge that most people would not do. It's a kind of a V-notch shape, and you have to balance your wheels on both sides of the canyon as you go up and out of this little rock formation. And being there with friends is when you usually make the best decisions. And I asked one of our friends, I said, do you think I could do it? Is this something that our stock Jeep with open differentials could do? And he kind of took a minute and looked at it, and he had been with us enough that he knew how I could drive and how I drove. He said, yeah, I think you could do it. And I said, really, you think I'm actually gonna make it? Because the last thing I wanna do is get down in there and not be able to get back out. And he reassured me that it'd be fine, and we went ahead and did that. And so we left the overlook and drove back to the extra credit line, and only 4 of us did it. And at this point, at about 1:30 to 2 o'clock in the morning, our decision-making skills were really good, obviously. And we decided that we would go ahead and, I went last in the group, or third in the group, because I wanted to watch a couple other people do it before I did it. And if you've been on a lot of these trails, watching someone else do them first oftentimes lets you know how to do it and how to do it well. And luckily our friend that was with us was a very good spotter, and he allowed us to make some corrections and relocate our vehicle and get it lined up properly to go up this obstacle. As we went up it, I remember going it up at first, and I felt the front tire kind of lean off a little bit, and I backed down and really quickly and went to do it again. And he said, no, that was the right line, do it again, go up that same spot. So as we went up, our front tire kind of lifted a little bit and then came back down just perfectly. And we kind of wandered up this trail just fine, and it worked out just fine. And then after we got through that, it was exciting. I had never done anything like that in the middle of the night before. And so we were feeling pretty excited, pretty confident. And then at that point, that's when the differences in the trucks really started to become evident. These other guys that we were with started to have a little bit more fun on the way back into town on this trail. So we were literally at the halfway point, and we proceeded to follow back these other Jeeps back to the trailhead again. And Hell's Revenge is a kind of a circular trail that has a connection in the middle, and it leads out the way it came in. And as we went to follow them, the discrepancies between our vehicles became extremely evident very quickly, because these other individuals had high horsepower, high travel, custom-built Jeeps, and they were just flying down this trail. And not wanting to be left behind, we started to do the same. So it was basically like red light, green light when I don't know if you ever played that as a kid, where one person stands up at the front of the classroom or in front of the room, turns away from you, and you go as fast as you can towards them, and as soon as they turn around and face you, you have to stop without being seen. And we were doing that with obstacles. So as soon as we would hit a section of somewhat smooth area, we would hammer down full speed as fast as we could to the next obstacle or rough patch, slam on the brakes, kind of come skidding to a stop, kind of fall over the first ledge, tiptoe down it as fast as we could, and then off again to try to just keep up with these guys. And that was the first time I really knew that I needed a proper suspension. Up until that point, I was like, oh, I can kind of deal with having a budget suspension. I can do an okay job with having something that's not top tier, until that night. And at that point, I saw these guys just tiptoeing across these rocks at speed, and we were just shaking our teeth out. But we did it. We went fast, we went quickly, and by the time we got to the end of the trail, we were only maybe, 10, 15 seconds behind our friends, but we were working our guts out to do it, and they were driving fairly smoothly. And it was fun. We had a good night. We ended up going back to the trailhead, meeting up at the parking lot, and everything looked normal. We had done a good job keeping up. No one knew anything different, but we knew in our truck that we had pushed it to its limits. And getting back into town, the truck felt okay, but it was definitely not the same. And it's funny because that vehicle, that truck was not my truck. Like I said, it was our company's truck, and every year they would send out a couple of trucks, a couple of Jeeps for us to use for Easter Jeep Safari, and usually I had my own as well. This year I didn't have my own. I had sold it previously so I could buy another vehicle, and so I was only using this truck. And it was comical because the next week when we shipped the trucks back to our headquarters in California, the facility manager called back up and said, I don't know what you do to these trucks, but every single year when they come back, they are totally trashed, and I have to get them aligned and fixed every year. And we kind of just chuckled, and it is what it is. That's what a Jeep is for. They take a beating, you put them back together, you tighten everything up, and they're fine again. But that's the value of using someone else's Jeep, especially a Jeep Safari.